Day 3 of ICMC. Welcome to track Q20 on quantum safe issues. My name's Johannes Lintzen. I'm with PQShield. If you want to know a little bit more about us, we have a booth downstairs. Come swing by and we can talk to you about post-quantum. This session, we have a presentation by Tony Rosati to start with. He's going to talk on multimodal cryptography, and then we're going to have some time for Q&A, and then we're going to have a panel that is on the topic of mapping the path to quantum resilience, how to navigate an expanded cryptographic menu. I think it's a long-winded way to say crypto agility, so I'm looking forward to that discussion. Certainly it's run by Bruno Couillard from Crypto4A, so looking forward to that as well. So Tony, do you want to get started with your presentation?
Let's see if this works. Good morning, everyone. Perfect. Yeah, thank you for coming early in the morning. My talk today is about a new quantum secure end-to-end key establishment protocol called Multimodal. So for an agenda, I'll explain why we even care about a new key agreement protocol. I'll explain the protocol briefly, talk about its security guarantees, applications, and implementation. Okay, so what is the current state of key agreement? If you look at our favorite protocols like TLS and IKE, MACsec, they're primarily just a simple asymmetric crypto Diffie-Hellman. And of course, that's not quantum safe, so we're now introducing post-quantum cryptography, Kyber, and most of these protocols will, because Kyber is not really quite mature yet, we're going to continue to use Diffie-Hellman and we'll build a hybrid key agreement protocol. So over time you'll see, and there's lots of proposals already in TLS showing the performance of hybrid key exchanges. The other issue is that key sizes for long-term security are still unknown. Like every so many years, you know, we increase the key sizes because of some computational assumption. And in fact, NIST has some special publications that tell you, okay, don't use these key sizes anymore, use other key sizes. Now, symmetric key cryptography can be long-term secure. Like if you can deliver a key out of band, you can use quantum key distribution, they're expensive, but they do offer long-term security, but they're hard to manage. Like in the telco world where MACsec and OTNsec at the optical layer is used, keys are programmed in, key encrypting keys, and sometimes they're never changed. Or you know, if you subscribe to what NSA recommendations, it's like 210 days. And those changes are usually manual. Somebody walks over and adds a new key to the endpoint, which is quite a risk from a security standpoint and for its secrecy. Okay, so I mentioned long-term security. Well, you might ask, well, who needs long-term security? Well, any trade secret, government, financial, military, requires long-term security for those secrets. We want it personally for our own information, healthcare, and so on. And there are long-lived devices in the field, like vehicles and equipment, where you want long-term security. You know, if you're just browsing the internet and you're doing a TLS session, you don't care about long-term security. But there are definitely many sectors that need long-term security, and we don't really guarantee that in our protocols. Okay, so I'll introduce multimodal cryptography, invented by David Zhao and Michele Mosca, who's here today. And they asked the question, well, why not combine asymmetric and symmetric cryptography? Combine the best features of both. And you can deliver a long-term secure key with a combination of a symmetric cryptography, classical asymmetric, and post-quantum crypto. And then we add some modern cryptographic features like ratcheting for symmetric key freshness, ephemeral asymmetric, hybridization, and that's a typo. It should be secret splitting, secrets between the infrastructure and the endpoints. And I'll explain what that means in a second. Okay, so let me go through the protocol. So in the blue bubble, you see some servers. These are called key distribution hubs, and they form this key distribution network. This is to manage the symmetric keys in the network. And so at time 0, all the endpoints have to enroll with a KDH. And if you want redundancy, you enroll with one or more KDHs. And you enroll, so for example, Alice creates certain secrets. There's a secret with the KDH and the endpoint, and then private public key pairs at the endpoint. So that's the enrollment phase. So to establish a secure session between Alice and Bob, the first thing you do is Alice will communicate with her KDH and get pre-key data for Bob. So that pre-key data is used to eventually derive a shared secret between Alice and Bob. Note in this diagram that Bob does not communicate with there's no need for Bob to communicate with the infrastructure. Okay, so the second step is for Alice then to create the final end-to-end key, and they do that using a hybrid authenticated key establishment protocol, which will be classic and post-quantum, with the symmetric key. And we use symmetric key ratcheting to achieve forward secrecy. So, and notice in this diagram, there's no communication with the infrastructure for that end-to-end key. So even if the infrastructure was compromised somehow, you don't compromise the end-to-end keys. So here's the protocol diagram for just the Alice and Bob communication. I'll give you a minute to memorize this. No, I wanted to show this because just to show how efficient it is. It's actually just one round trip and a key confirmation. So to do this protocol, it's about the same time as doing a hybrid key agreement. Okay, so let's delve into some of the security features and guarantees. So multimodal offers defense in depth for those end-to-end keys. And because we're uniquely combining two cryptographic ingredients, one being the quantum secure authenticated key agreement, which is classical and post-quantum, and combine that with a strong symmetric secret between the two parties and the KDH. So if any one of these schemes you'd have to break all three of these protocols to break the system. That's why it's defense in depth. Okay, so what are the security guarantees? Well, okay, end-to-end strong computational security, even if all asymmetric key cryptography is broken. Strong computational forward secrecy. Computational post-compromise security, even if the secrets were compromised earlier. And then breaching the back end does not lead to any endpoint identity theft. And we have a security proof for this protocol. Okay, so how do you use multimodal? Well, if you look at all the security protocols in the communication stack, they all accept a pre-shared key. And so that's our vehicle to deliver a multimodal end-to-end key. Some of these RFCs, like TLS and IKE v2, were recently upgraded to mix in a pre-shared key along with certificate authentication. So that's a great improvement to those RFCs. And in terms of implementation, well, you do need infrastructure. We need to deploy these KDHs, which will most likely be in HSMs in a cloud. And on the client side, you need to either incorporate a library into an application or use a standard key retrieval method. So most routers and optical endpoints will use ETSI 014, SNMP v3, or Cisco SKIP. So that's the standard way to retrieve keys that way. Okay, so in summary, multimodal combines multiple strands of security: symmetric cryptography, classical asymmetric, post-quantum. We hybridize those. Ratcheting. I didn't mention an offline mode. Alice can always she can retrieve pre-key data and then cache it for subsequent communications with Bob. So there is an offline mode. And secret splitting. So the infrastructure is managing secrets, and the endpoints have private-public key pairs, right? So those secrets are split. And so in general, multimodal offers a very strong security guarantees for those end-to-end keys. Okay, that's my talk. So thank you. We have a white paper, a security proof. You're welcome to download that, and we'd love some comments on this. Thank you. I'll take some. Happy to take questions.
Yeah, any questions in the audience? Yeah, we have a microphone set up. We're recording the session, so you should use the microphone. Thanks.
Hi, thank you very much. Very good presentation. I was interested earlier this year when Apple sort of launched a sort of updated messenger where they were using lots of different, as the way the Signal protocol does, lots of different key freshness methods. One of the things they found with MLChem was they couldn't match the freshness that they were getting with elliptic curve and symmetric ratcheting, so they had to sort of only ratchet with the post-quantum mechanism on a much more infrequent basis, and they even had to drop the sort of level of MLChem that they were using. So does your protocol allow for updating for key freshness using only some parts
Yes.
of those on those bases?
It does.
Excellent, thank you.
Hi, I'm going to be going into this a bit later in my talk, but
Sure.
when you get to things like TLS, you have to be a bit careful about them using symmetric keys for setting up the sessions, because quite a few of these protocols will do a little ephemeral key exchange for forward secrecy.
Sure.
And they don't necessarily ratchet in the primary key exchange into that ephemeral. So you do your nice secure post-quantum MLChem
Yes.
key exchange, and then for extra security, they do it with, Diffie-Hellman 512. So you have to be a bit careful, and I think that we probably need to fix TLS and so on, so the key exchange don't do this deranged throw away the primary key.
Yeah,
And
there are proposals. So TLS 1.3, Douglas Stabila has a proposal in for a hybrid within TLS. TLS is very sensitive to, as you can appreciate, is very sensitive to timing, right? We want a browser, like those communications are very short-lived. So adding the extra overhead of, another key agreement to get the pre-shared key is tricky.
Yeah, but if you've got a PQC strong symmetric key to start with, why not mix that into the KDF that you use to form the session keys?
Well,
that wouldn't take any more time.
Yeah, and TLS does support that pre-shared key. Yeah.
Yes, support. How do you require it from the externals is the problem.
Okay.
Any other questions from the audience? No, I also have a question, Tony, if I may.
Yeah.
So are there any goals with the protocol, like where you want to take that next?
Yeah, so we want to, we published the protocol, and it's available for open review. Our goal is to standardize some form of this, and we're talking to different standards organizations to see where the best fit is, if we can get a critical mass of people that want it standardized. So yeah, we're looking to make this fully open.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the audience at this time? Otherwise, let's thank Tony again for your presentation.
Thank you.
And then if I could ask the panelists to make their way up here.
Good morning. Thank you, Tony, I guess, to providing an extra 15 minutes to our panel. So our panel this morning is titled, and I'll read it just to make sure, it's Mapping the Path to Quantum Resilience and How to Navigate an Expanded Cryptographic Menu. So my name is Bruno Couillard. I'm CEO of a company called Crypto4A. We design HSMs. But I'm here today and accompanied by an illustrious set of panelists. And we want to talk, and I will be letting them do most of the talk, about this challenge that we're all facing with respect to our migration to a post-quantum era. And what I'll start with is to let each of the panelists introduce themselves. They'll probably do a much better job than I can. They'll let you know who they are, where they come from, why they're sitting here, and why is their opinion matters. And then we'll follow that up with a series of prepared questions. And once we've gone through that, I'd like to open it up to the audience for your questions. So that's the intent. But at any time during this conversation, if you find something that is really important to you, by all means, there's a microphone there. Just come up and ask your questions. So without further ado, I'll start with you, Margaret. I'll let Margaret introduce herself, and we'll go in that order.
Okay. Well, I'm Margaret Salter. I'm a cryptographer at AWS. I've been a cryptographer for 40 years now, 34 of them at the National Security Agency. Why you should listen to me? Absolutely no reason whatsoever. I'm wrong just as often as I'm right, but I'm very opinionated about it.
Let's use that for me. Thank you. Jeff.
Hi, my name is Jeff Andersen. I've been at Google for about 8 years now. I work on data center platforms, low-level security, hardware roots of trust, secure boot and attestation. I've been getting involved in NIST activities for the past couple of years now, now that we've had to start paying more attention to it. And I do think that if this career doesn't work out, I can go be a lawyer, because it's a lot of reading specs and interpreting them cleverly. So.
Thank you, Jeff. Michele.
I'm Michele Mosca. I'm a mathematician by background. In the early 90s, one of the founders of Certicom, Scott Vanstone, got me interested in cryptography, mostly trying to break it, which was a lot of fun. And then when I was at Oxford studying more mathematics around that, I very reluctantly encountered quantum computing, went through the usual phases of dismissing, ridiculing it, and then ultimately realizing, okay, this will eventually work. And I remember in '96 on my master's committee, I said, because they forced me to answer the question of when do you think we're going to have quantum computers? I said, well, not for 20 years. But I said, in 20 years, we're going to have 20 qubits, and then that question will be clear. So I've been working just by fluke, because of just some great mentors and so on in cryptography and quantum computing since the early mid-90s, when they were really just starting to ramp up, not from the beginning, but almost. And often found myself being the chief translator between the communities, because there's a fine line between unlikely and 1 in 10 unlikely versus 1 in a million unlikely. So at some point ended up being the chief proselytizer for we need to get ready for this migration, having seen how long it took ECC to go from an idea to a globally deployed standard. So a lot of lessons from my old mentors in public key cryptography and how we're supposed to do that in time before quantum computers become cryptographically irrelevant. It's not easy. It's been a long journey, but a fun journey, and get to meet really talented people from many different areas.
Thank you, Michele. So even though Margaret thinks that her opinion doesn't count, I'll start with you. Margaret, you've been very involved with your work in Amazon, working on multiple aspects of this quantum transition. How would you characterize the blockers? What is your biggest blockers? I know we have a lot to do, but where are you finding the obstacles right now in your work?
First, I'd like to say that it's actually going pretty well. TLS is in awesome shape. Integrating ML-Chem in a hybrid mode into TLS is a piece of cake, and everybody knows how to do it now. Interoperability is happening. This is just a really good story. When it comes to encryption, I think we have a pretty good story. We're going after the important things, which are TLS, MACsec, and IPsec, and we're making sure we've got ML-Chem in there, and we're making sure we got hybrid just for the rip-roaring fun of it. So that's my first point, is we're in pretty good shape when it comes to encryption and common protocols. Signatures, not so much. Mostly because of the way signatures work, right? There's a kind of a domino effect. And so the first thing we need is a whole boatload of HSM vendors to have MLDSA keys in their HSMs so that we can all start standing up roots and playing with them. So we're kind of stuck at step one here. And I, being a fan of MLDSA, would like us to get to step two. But I understand why we haven't, because the starting gun was just fired, frankly. If I were an HSM vendor, I wouldn't have put MLDSA in there until NIST actually said, yes, this is what it's gonna be. But now the gun is fired, let's get rolling, because signatures are gonna be a real pain in the tuchus. And so we do need to get moving on that. We need to get moving on that right freaking now, because we are gonna find a lot more difficulty chucking those things into TLS and other stuff than we have with ML-Chem, which has been a bit of a cakewalk. Okay, that's it.
Jeff or Michele, you know, definitely blockers in your worlds as well. What do you guys think?
Definitely agree. Both like secure boot and attestation are all about signatures, and there's unfortunately not there's not a sweet spot of a signature that's small, fast, easy to generate and verify. So it poses a few trade-offs, as well as the fact that the general consensus among cryptographers is that some of these new algorithms like MLDSA are not good enough to stand on their own. They need to be hybridized with something classical, so there's no risk of regression, meaning all our signatures just get that much larger and longer to verify.
Yep.
Yeah, great insights, and I agree with Margaret. It's not all doom and gloom and we're all going to die. A lot has been done. We have a lot going for us. And I think in general in cybersecurity, the biggest challenges are not the technology or technological ones. We're pretty good at solving those if we're actually given time and a mandate. And so I think one of the reasons things aren't worse, and they're actually in some cases pretty good, is because the NSA and others, a small handful of others around the world, actually made a business or a decision, we need to migrate. So I think the biggest obstacle is the desire to do so, and empowering people to do, to create the cryptographic resilience, which is generally lacking for the usual market failure reasons. But in this case, there have been a few examples of great leadership. So we're a bit ahead of where we could, probably would have been by the usual forces in cybersecurity.
So from what you guys are saying, we are definitely on the right track. There's still lots of work to do, but there are no significant blockers. There's a pile of work to be done, but nothing that prevents us, except for pushing hard on, as you said, vendors and so on and so forth. So far, things are looking good. They're not perfect, but we're at least on the right path, and we're in the transition process, right?
We just don't know if we'll be ready in time. I don't honestly know if the migrations will have seeped through enough of our critical infrastructures before quantum-enabled attacks. If quantum doesn't go much faster than we see it going, and if the PQC migration doesn't go much slower than we think we can pull it off, I think we're okay. But that, I'd like to make a stronger statement, but I can't.
It's the $7.1 billion question.
Yeah, well, that's another question.
So this work, and you, Jeff, are quite involved with I guess the next wave of how the internet is shaping up. Like I'd suggest for the past 30 years, the internet has been mostly about information and money transfers and so on. And so it's machine talking to machines. But in the next wave, we're starting to see massive amounts of machines being deployed, objects, technology like IoT. So you're involved with that, and it's a different world. How do you see this evolution and the challenges you're facing, specifically that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I myself am not as closely involved with like the web PKI of the world, like the TLS side of things, but where it does affect me is low-level hardware roots of trust, emitting attestations, and the fact of the matter is that the ecosystem for emitting and verifying these attestations is very coupled to the web PKI way of doing things. If you want to go ship a product which emits an attestation from a hardware chip, you're going to want it to be signed by a certificate which can be verified by OpenSSL, which means until IETF finalizes how they'll do all their certificates, we can't actually ship anything. Now, I wish we weren't in that world. That would require a lot more work on my sector, I guess, to come up with our own ecosystem of tooling and protocols which work together. So far, that energy hasn't been expended, and we just do whatever IETF says.
Michele, any?
Well, I mean, it's a point you often make. I think we do need to remember it's not just about secrets, the integrity, authenticity, but then the control of devices. Like there's a lot at stake here. And sometimes, I mean, we tend to gravitate toward the confidentiality side of things, which obviously is still important, but
yeah, and I think
the threat surface is so much wider.
Oh, I'm going to actually look to Ross here. Ross.
Uh-oh.
I'd like to follow up on what was just said about the IETF and these algorithms. I mean, this just published them, right? And we already have drafts for everything that you're talking about in the non-hybrid cases in the LAMPS working group in the IETF. Those will drop, it should be RCs by the end of the year. I mean, I can't think of anything that has gone that fast in PKI ever. So, I mean, I think that the specifications for how to do the certificate pieces and how to use the signatures in CMS and that kind of thing are like going to be there very soon. How it's going to work in the hybrid case, I thought those were going to be done first. Turns out they're not, because there was so many debates. Where did he get talk about them? About what key sizes ought to be used with what key sizes and all of that kind of stuff. What KDF's appropriate? Not sure we'll ever get an answer to that. That's grounded in a proof or anything. But I just wanted to give a little more.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I hope I didn't lay too much on the feet of IETF moving slow or fast. Certainly we've been following these specs, and they look definitely workable. Part of my I guess, frustration is not at IETF moving fast, it's more at our sector not having comparable tooling. And this doesn't have to do with PQC. It mainly has to do with the fact that we need to do ASN1 because that's the only way to do certificates, and that's really annoying for low-level hard roots of trust. Like, can we have our own standard, please? But no, we can't, because everyone who's going to consume these needs to use all the tooling. So that's not a PQC thing. That's just a way it is. So yeah.
And I'd suggest, and I'll get to your question in a second, but I would suggest that this is widely known that the sector, the operational technology, the small, tiny device sector, is probably in its infancy when it comes to having to deal with cryptography. For years and years and years, you build the toy, you'd send it, who cares about security, or you'd build a piece of ICS or SCADA, you'd build it and never touch the internet. That was the rules. Now everything is changing. Everything touches the internet, everything connects to the internet, and that entire world or sector has to deal with lack of tools, lack of knowledge, not fully equipped with the same capabilities that have been fairly obvious, or not obvious, but fairly available in the IT world. So I think that's also another sign of we're facing a variety of challenges, all compounded by adopting new crypto at the same time as you're having to adopt crypto. And I think that makes it double whammy.
Yeah, and one other thought is that there's a cascade effect of where NIST defines their algorithms, IETF defines how to do it and how to make signatures and certificates. SPDM defines how to do PQC in their side, and then PCI-DE brings that in. So people say, we want PQC now. It's like, well, gotta give it a minute to bake,
Yes.
Just to probe a bit more on the hybrid question, without wishing to put words into the panel's mouth, they all sort of said something which I chose to interpret as hybrid's good. There are, however, significant voices who sort of said we prefer to do pure PQC. I'm referring here to NSA and NCSC in the UK. Are we confident that that sort of difference of opinion won't turn into a speed bump for us?
Well, what I'd say is I'm confident that we're doing hybrid right now, and the performance that we're getting out of it is perfectly good. It's just as good as doing the traditional one alone. So when it comes to ML-Chem, I'm not paying any penalty in performance for doing hybrid. I can't FIPS pure PQ now anyway, so why on earth would I not do hybrid? The only reason in my head that I would not do hybrid is it turned out that it was really bogging me down. The thing is, what's gonna bog me down are these freaking signatures, which we're not doing right now. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, we're gonna have to talk when it comes to signatures about what we're gonna do. But when it comes to ML-Chem and hybrid, all the experiments we have run, and I think my buddy Jake, who may or may not be here, is giving a talk later on how our performance characteristics of our TLS hybrid, and it's groovy, right? We've got no problem. And MaxX's gonna be the same, and Ike's gonna be the same. And as far as I'm concerned, just to ramble on further, right, that's the number one thing we should be paying attention to. I mean, I hear what you say about signatures, but when it comes right down to it, it's the store now, decrypt later is one of the main things we're worried about, which is why I'm not fussing that I don't have certs on my TLS right now.
Hi, I just wanted to, you mentioned the signatures. So we've been working with those for quite a long time. It's like, so if I put on my developer hat, signatures fit better into the existing APIs that already exist today. Chems do not. So just kind of a flip coin, like you had mentioned that, chems are a cakewalk. Well, yeah, in some regards, but in other regards, if you're a developer trying to actually implement these things and you've never implemented a chem before, you don't have this in your, you have a product or a library that's been out for 20 years, now you want to add this. Now this is a whole new piece of code and infrastructure that you have to add. The signatures just fit in, although NIST did throw us a loop when they added the context and the signing, but anyway, the concept of the signature has been there, right? So that remains. So when you say that one is, chems are better defined, I think it depends, I guess, what angle you're looking at. And I just wondered what your comment was on that.
Cryptographers and cryptographically aware people write my libraries.
Yes.
Right, and then everybody calls my library, including the TLS. So I don't want Joe developer, level 1 dude I just hired yesterday, touching my chem, right? That is actually handed to my high quality cryptographic developers. Yeah. And then I give them a swell API and I say, call this sucker, and we're all good.
Okay, yeah. But then integrating it into applications that you have, right? That's the piece that's
but they're all it depends on what you're
depends.
talking.
Yeah, so like I know TLS doesn't, like it's, probably it's a huge part of the industry, but there's like cryptography is used everywhere, right? So I think there was someone did a slide with the plumbing, right? So it's used like absolutely everywhere. So if you take TLS out of the equation, then it gets a little more.
Yeah, I agree, but a whole boatload of people who aren't using TLS or another sanctioned IETF protocol should probably knock it off rather than trying to fix their stuff, right? like I said, I'm very opinionated, but
I thought you said you didn't know.
That's how we learn
I'm
from
not
each
saying
other,
I'm
right?
right. I'm just saying
This
I
is-
wouldn't
this
do
is-
it that way because you're just inheriting a problem you're going to live with forever. TLS at least knows how to negotiate cipher suites. Right?
Yeah.
Why would you go through all the pain, agony, and effort of doing something else? You're going to have a really compelling use case and a really compelling reason why TLS doesn't work for you before I would say go ahead and do your own thing.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
We should be using standards where we
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd like to, I'd like
Someone
to
else talk.
offer Jeff also I think you had a feedback on some questions
a
earlier.
couple of, actually,
Yeah.
on that last one, it is, true that, TLS is probably, like, if you're doing transport security at the high level, like TLS, go for it. Other use cases might not have an out-of-the-box solution, like NCAPS, DCAPS is a brand new cryptographic primitive. It doesn't, like, for example, TPM doesn't do NCAPS,
Yeah.
DCAPS. PKCS11 doesn't do. Like, I was at a talk yesterday, which was really good to explain what we're doing with PQC, and hey, here's some new primitives. And I will not remark it would be neat to find a way to use classical crypto with those new primitives so that you can just do that every time you want to do something which looks like a chem, instead of PQC for those and then classical for these other ones that were there before. The prior question about hybrid, just a note, I am not a cryptographer, so I do not have an opinion on how safe hybrid is, not a qualified one anyways, but it is a trade-off. Like, yes, doing hybrid is more safe, is what they say. It does come with costs around signature sizes and times. And one thing that occurs to me is that we don't, as far as I know, there's not really a solid exit criteria when we can stop doing hybrid. At some point, the cryptographers are generally going to feel safe enough, and then certain use cases could just stop doing hybrid, like secure boot. No one cares how you do your secure boot, so that you can just drop your classical one and ship a new next product. But for anything where there's interoperability, like SPDM, TLS, whatever, I think we're going to have a long time after the cryptographers are happy with post-quantum when we can actually stop doing the classical.
My view, I mean, I've been promoting hybrid for a long time. I mean, I respectfully acknowledge and listen to the concerns that our friends in the US and UK say. Definitely take it seriously, but unless there's a resource constraint and so on, I would keep using ECC until quantum cryptanalysis of ECC was cheap and easy. Then just let it die a natural death. I wouldn't spend money to take it out. But this is sort of a naive cryptographer's perspective. You do have to look at performance constraints as well and other issues.
I've often heard from experts that no one is able to guarantee today MLDSA is going to last 20 or 30 years. So we've had RSA. We've been awesomely happy with it. And many people feel that we may have to keep ourselves with some insurance policy to switch possibly in the future. So this hybridization work we're doing may ultimately remain in play for potentially ever. Is that something you share? I don't think you do, but I still feel
look,
that...
lattices are ugly. Everybody agrees, or maybe they don't, but lattices are gross and ugly, and RSA has been around a long time, and it's pretty and beautiful, just like ECC is pretty and beautiful. And so everybody who looks at a lattice is like, how am I supposed to analyze this thing? This is really disgusting. And half of the people walk away and don't bother, and the other half of the people get some programs
I
out.
hope there's no authors of lattice
It's
here.
okay.
There's one standing right there.
There's quite, you can't call it pretty, though. You just can't. So from an analysis perspective, RSA is as easy as could be to talk about. Elliptic curve, it's a little harder to talk about. Lattices, woohoo. But, so yes, there are a lot of people who are lattice hesitant. And that's okay. That's why we do hybrid. And if lattices hang around for a long time and don't fall down, then we'll all feel better. But I don't know if it's good or not. I could break RSA tomorrow. I'd like to. That would be fun. And I'd get a paper. But
Don't listen to that.
well, but you just don't know, right? You don't know about any of these things. There's assumptions in every one of them.
Michele, what do you think?
I think we can't go back to Kansas or whatever, anymore. So we got to just acknowledge that we rely on cryptography more than ever before.
Yep.
We have a more than a lifetime opportunity to rebuild the foundations better than they were before. And part of it means having an elegant, practical way to layer in some hybrid fashion, whatever, 2 algorithms for those who want that level of risk reduction. And for those who don't, then they can go with 1. I think the risk of any one algorithm being broken is too high for the kind of critical applications we have today. So a standard, because part of the reason, I mean, we're a bit late. One of the things I think we're late on is clearly articulating the right way, the right ways, because it's not just one way to do hybrid in this or that application. Because some people are ready to do it, but they don't have a clear specification of how. So we're a bit late. That's some of the things we didn't do fast enough. So I think, so I mean, again, I was one of the first people to be saying we really, really need to get this post-quantum migration before the NSA announcement and so on, right? This was a fringe part of the academic cryptography community, and then it started to become mainstream after 2015. But stepping back, I think we're delusional if we think next time we're going to get advance warning, we're going to get 30 years heads up, right? Maybe, but I don't think we should hope. We shouldn't rely on hope as our strategy. So I think the new responsible management of cryptography requires 3 things. We know what happens if it breaks, right? And most people, up until recently, had no clue what would happen if Margaret writes a nice paper on breaking RSA. They'd be like, I've gotten the emails from people when there have been wrong claims of that. They're like, is this legit? I'm like, what if it were? I'm like, you wouldn't know. So that's where you need crypto inventories and so on, and proper risk assessments. Secondly, with a straight face, tell me that if it is broken, you'll be able to get it back up and running in an appropriate amount of time. And agility is kind of the buzzword, and I'm waiting for Lily to educate me and others on what the right interpretations of it, but it's a means to recovering, reestablishing the level of security we want. And we don't have that yet. We're getting there, sort of. And the third one is, so you want fast recovery, fast enough. It could be 10 seconds, could be 10 minutes, could be 10 months, depends on the application. And the last thing is it better be a recoverable event. So you kind of have to bound the blast radius, right? And say, okay, if this terrible thing does happen and we don't get 30 years heads up, it might have started 3 months ago for all we know. It'd be bad probably, but it won't be catastrophic. And there's a number of things we can do, and it's how we structure things in the first place, compartmentalize and so on. But there I think we do need defense in depth. That Tony was giving us one example. I think Daniel's been also advocate. There's more than one, I think, credible approach for giving us tools that don't evaporate or potentially fall apart if somebody finds a way to find a short vector in a lattice. Or if there's a Shor-like event where that and the alternative all go all at once. For at least our more critical systems, we're relying on the tried and true pre-shared key and symmetric key methods. Not instead of public keys, but that defense in depth approach. So those 3 things I think we have to have a credible answer to. Because right now the answer is no, we don't, or I don't know. And we need to get more into the yes, somewhat convincing yes.
And just, Jeff, in case you wanted to add, and then we'll go to you. Sorry, any further thoughts on the hybrid? And you're stepping into a world with the OT world where, as you said earlier, the toolkits are not readily available. You have to build from scratch a lot of the development. So for you, hybrid will be just a part of life, as opposed to the IT world where it was always.
And I do want to acknowledge that, yes, I did characterize it as a trade-off, safety versus resource cost, but if it's not secure, it's not secure. So I'm not acknowledge if we're not comfortable with MLDSA, okay, hybridize it until we are.
Cool. Over to you, ma'am.
All right. Hi there. Nina Binnen from Sandbox AQ. Love the discussion. I do like lattices, but that's not my question.
It's okay.
My question is about signatures. And so what I do in my day-to-day work is looking at protocols and seeing how can we make them post-quantum and also to experiment test. And so I do look a lot at authentication and signatures. And I do find myself trapped in the same situation I was 2 years ago, namely, yes, signatures are there now, the standards, they are still too big. And so we are again waiting for the new NIST standardization for signatures again, people are reluctant to change the standards and so on and so forth. Is there any lesson learned you had? Because we have been waiting for the standards. Is there any lesson learned in how to approach experiments? Should we start already with the experiments or not? Should we wait until the standardization, the next one, is over, so to say? Any recommendations?
If you're asking me, I'd say just go ahead and suck it up. We'll do MLDSA because it's what we've got. It's what NIST has endorsed. And we'll see when we just can't freaking manage it, right? Well, there will be occasions when we put it and we say, oh, okay, well, I used to do key exchanges this often. Now I'm not going to do them that often anymore. I'm going to make the time a little bit longer, or whatever it is I have to do, the adjustments I have to do to make MLDSA work. Because I think that's where we are right now. We've got to do something. MLDSA is here, and I don't think it's going to be catastrophic. So what the heck? Ask these guys.
I'll answer to that too.
I mean, I guess all I would add is, similar to what I was saying earlier, it's not like, okay, we got these new algorithms, now everybody stop working on cryptography, but it's a sweet spot. I'm not suggesting we just have proliferation of pointless academic papers, but we do need people trying to come up with better ways to do it and have a healthy pipeline of alternatives. Either as these things break, but also maybe there is a much shorter, faster signature out there. It's not going to come out anytime soon, but if in the next 5 to 10 years it does emerge, God knows what use cases we're going to have in 5 to 10 years. At least we have a healthy pipeline. I don't know that the market forces in academia and industry are really, I mean, I think we need to keep working on this stuff and not say, okay, we're done now. Because I mean, well, you know, you're supervising, you've been working on PQC back before it was cool. But back then it was just a few dozen half crazy people working on, and now we're building on what they were doing, even though they were not being rewarded. So if we could find a way to, again, find that sweet spot where we better reward ongoing research in the next generation of this stuff. But again, you're in academia, you know what I mean by the stuff we don't really want to necessarily see more of, but I mean the proper disciplined development of new ideas. And there's going to be the speculative stuff, and eventually it'll trickle up into something we might actually put into a product. But I think we need to keep encouraging academia to do that.
And on the note of signature sizes, yes, they're all larger than we would like. And for most every use case, I think MLDSA is just how it needs to be at this point. NIST did standardize SLHDSA, which leverages hashes, and therefore I don't believe cryptographers would need that one to be hybridized. So if the use case is okay with it, then it seems like a viable option. And it can get smaller. Like what was standardized is rated for, I don't remember, but a lot of signatures, like 2 to the 64. And I know that NIST is aware that there is use cases for smaller signatures, particularly around like firmware signing, code signing, where you're signing a very small handful of times. Again, that doesn't work for all use cases, but if it is your use case, then it would be groovy.
So at the risk of getting Margaret angry at me.
Well, he already said inventory, so I could, okay, on that too,
good.
But go ahead.
I really think that one of the obscure cryptographic tool we have, which is the hash-based signature, stateful hash-based signatures, has been ignored or left in the corner. But if you were to ask, what's your break the glass, in case of emergency, break the glass, I would suggest LMS or XMSS is probably the one thing that we know can probably get you across any of these possible things in the future. And if ever someone finds a means to break LMS or XMSS, we might as well pack our bags and go back to farming. Because the reality is hash algorithms are at the foundation of everything we do from a digital signature. Whichever technique, whether it's lattice or something else, you still need a hash. And if the hash itself gets to be broken, we're in trouble. So I would suggest, and NSA I think kind of hints to that or highlights that in their CNSA 2.0, when they're suggesting that your firmware and software, the very fundamental bits inside your machines are to be firmware signed, the recommendation is a hash-based signature. The reason for that, I think, is this is probably one of the, at least, I haven't heard many people feeling that this is going to be broken anytime soon. So I think in our approach, we probably want to keep in mind some techniques and leave some break the glass sort of capability in our products, in our protocols, so that we can always deal with possible finds of the nature of, whoops, someone has found a flaw in or issues with some of the new signatures coming up in the future. So I would definitely suggest that is also a very solid alternative. But I'll stop here. You, sir.
Hi, yes. RSA has ruled for almost 50 years, I think, and they still have like 10-year shelf life, I think. So what if someone invents a quantum-safe RSA algorithm that nullifies the Shor's algorithm? Would that be accepted by? Because we know that RSA has worked for 60 years. So if we invent like a quantum-safe RSA algorithm and Shor's algorithm becomes dead, it's just dead.
That sounds like a question to direct to the mathematicians at NIST.
I think that's what Kyber is trying to be, right? Isn't it? The math is different, but it's just a quantum-safe version of what RSA does. So I'm not sure what else it would be.
You're suggesting a modification to RSA?
Right.
Has this been proposed to NIST, like as Jeff was suggesting? Is it in the on-ramp, like there's a current set of crypto being studied? Has that been proposed?
It's a new algorithm. I mean, I'm submitting my algorithm right now as we speak, and it's a quantum-safe RSA version, which nullifies the Shor's algorithm right away. On day zero, basically. Quantum computers won't be able to do anything about this algorithm. So they'll have to either invent a new ways to hack into this, basically.
Good.
And the beauty of this algorithm is like people are increasing their public key size by like 4 KB to more size. I'm going towards 0. So this new algorithm starts with literally 8-byte public key size. So there are different challenges for this algorithm. There is a 2 level of maths. One is RSA, and there is another level of math that got added.
So coming down the line, we're expecting to see your algorithm in the suite of possibilities.
Right. I'm late in the game, so probably next year you'll see this.
Next few years we'll find out.
Yes.
Thanks.
So need to see what you mean by that, because obviously Shor's algorithm finds the order of an element in a group, but if like Johannes, Buchmann and Williams had a scheme that was kind of Diffie-Hellman-like, but not quite. So it wasn't obvious if you could apply Shor's algorithm to it, because it kind of obfuscated a bit of the group structure. But then Sean Holgren figured out how to break it anyway. So I guess I'll need to see what you mean by RSA, quantum safe
absolutely.
RSA. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Aurelia. How does PQShield play?
There is a quantum safe version of RSA. It was submitted to NIST, and it is safe. It just takes you 3 days to generate a key. And the key sizes are in the gigabytes.
Yeah, terabytes. Yeah.
I can demo you, which takes like key size within milliseconds.
Right. I'm just saying that when you said that, I immediately thought to the version that Dan Bernstein created that's out there that was submitted to the NIST, more of we're just throwing everything out there. But yeah, any other key algorithms that are for this type of stuff, NIST still has to go through. I mean, there was lots of ideas in the first round, and about half of them were broken within the first time people took a look at them. And even ones that survived the first thing. We had algorithms break in the last round. So even if you submit it today, we're not going to be looking at it for standardization for at least 3 years.
Right.
So anyway, what we have is what we have now. So
Correct.
So I want to circle back to a comment that Michele made earlier, which is that the next time around we're not going to have 30 years of warning, and that is a problem. I would submit, though, that we do actually have an emerging technology that we've had 10 years of warning on at least, and that's basically machine learning. And so this is a technology that we don't fully control in a lot of ways, and that bothers me greatly. And it's not a new thing. This is, I mean, you just look back at the DARPA crypto challenge, grand challenge 10 years ago. We knew this was a problem. So just pointing out that the next next asteroid that's going to hit is maybe already in our sights.
And I think what you're suggesting, and lots of experts do bring up all the time, is there will be compounding effects here between AI, ML, quantum capabilities that we can currently foresee. But if anything, it's going to accelerate the ability to crack things we're putting out there, hoping to be secure. So it might militate in the concept of we may go to hybrid but never come back to a pure world. We may need to keep hybrid. That's, I believe, a lot of experts' opinion, that once we go and get to finalize and organize ourselves and define what hybrid means, because hybrid sometimes when you're talking about key exchange has a certain meaning. When you're talking digital signature, it takes a slightly different approach, because then you end up with certificates with hybrid format, composite format, and there's a whack of hybridization variants. But once we clear these hurdles of defining and clarifying, I do believe, I would be surprised that the software we evolve to have will want to revert back to going back to a pure stance, is what I'm suggesting may happen to our universe.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that we go back to a pure standard or anything.
No.
I'm just saying that ultimately there is a threat that is on the horizon that we really should be paying more attention to.
Correct, yes, fully agree. And I think most people are worried about the same things. Yes.
Yes, I'd like to thank you guys for a great presentation. I came late, but I'm going to pick it up on video. And I'd also like to thank the gentleman for pointing out that it's going to take like 3 years for things to get looked at. Now, the standards are not proven to be unbreakable. Therefore, by CISA's definition, they are not secure by design, and very, very unfortunate things can happen. In the first keynote that I sat in, or first presentation I sat in, Blair from Thales gave a wonderful, wonderful presentation where he talked about taking a look at pragmatically secure algorithms. This would require a relaxation of the process that you guys are using. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on any kind of relaxation and the incorporation of pragmatic, secure algorithm inclusion. And thank you very much for your answer.
Okay. Well, you won't like my answer. Because I spent many, many years at the National Security Agency, and most of my job was evaluation of algorithms. And I will say that evaluating an algorithm takes a heck of a long time. You're never really done. And you are done if you break it. Then you're done. You're like, groovy, I'm done, cash awards all around, what's next? But when you don't break it, that's where you are. And everybody has a different approach or a different idea to cryptography. And that's great. However, when it comes right down to it, we all have to interoperate. We all have to have things that talk to each other. And I'm not going to buy anything where I can't buy something from vendor A and something from vendor B, and they talk to each other seamlessly without me having to fuss with it. So when it comes right down to it, NIST has to be really, really firm and, very strongly opinionated about how many algorithms they're going to have. And so I really want them to be that way.
Not to pick too fine of a point, but I actually like your answer. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other comments from Jeff or Michele on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a sweet spot of, you don't, like 20 alternatives is just, can't possibly scrutinize them and manage them. Just one is maybe not enough diversity, but then I think Adi Shamir once framed it at one of the PQC workshops. Should be a small set of standards that are kind of the first choice, unless there's a really, really good reason. But then we do, and as I was kind of discussing in response to Nina, there should be another tier which are kind of in the D category, but not really, but ready to go if needed, but moderate level of scrutiny. But we only have, there's only a small group of people who can really, like, we have limited resources, human capital, money, and other things. So, and then there'll be a third pipeline, which is really research. But there's a difference between good, sound research, which is risky and could be wrong, versus just bad, ad hoc cryptography. And the experts know the difference, and at least for the most part. But we do need that full pipeline, but you kind of have to know which layer, what you're talking about. So I think it's fine I think we do need ongoing academic research, bringing new mathematical ideas. Can this be leveraged into a key exchange? Great, but that's 2 levels at least away before something I would ever deploy in a product. But we need to nurture this healthy pipeline and not give too much sugar to one, wasting our time, but not let it starve either.
I think I agree with all that. The phrase pragmatic security, I don't know if this is what you meant, but what that calls to my mind is like other cryptographic constructs, other constructs, cryptographic or not, that you can add to a system so that you lean less heavily on the asymmetric crypto, which is prone to failure in a post-quantum world. In a root of trust context, this can look like, well, when we manufacture chips, we have to give them all a unique cryptographic identity. Let's all give them a class symmetric secret so they can emit an HMAC that we can verify to make sure that they're one of ours, which doesn't rely on asymmetric cryptography. Also, but it has other warts. Like, it's a class secret. If one chip falls, they all fall. So just from reviewing it in my head, it feels like these schemes generally boiled back down to, we just need solid asymmetric cryptographic primitives.
So one of the things that you've been very involved with, Michele, since early 2000, if not in the 90s, has been this waving a flag and explaining to people and starting the ETSI-IQC conference back, I think, in 2006-07, if I recall.
That conference, you started in 13. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
But you were already involved with these types of things. So in your last 20 years of seeing what you've started and been advocating, how do you feel about the current state of affair and what you're seeing on the planet, on a global bubble we live on?
It's exciting. I think we still have to choose. I mean, there's still a lot of choices to be made, and so we have a lot of opportunity to make things better. We also have a lot of opportunity to make things worse. But I think there's a lot of people, especially in this room, who are not just about quantum, but cybersecurity and cryptography in general, trying to make things better. I think we need to figure out, the technology part is absolutely, we got to keep doing our best there. But if we could figure out how to better manage things from a business and political and whatever perspective, all the non-technical sides, then that will help us in the long run. If we could use this as a catalyst or a way to understand the market failures that are just hammering our cyber resilience in general, including AI and whatever. If this is an opportunity to shine a light on some of that, not make it perfect, but make it better. So there's a better appreciation of the cyber risks we're taking. Because right now we don't see them, so then then it's an externality, and of course the market forces aren't going to address it if the losses, we don't even account for them. And then there's also some moral hazards where we kind of know there's some risk, but someone else will pay for it, the tax, like someone else. So those are two of the biggest problems of cybersecurity, and it's not just cyber, there's other similar market failures. So there's an opportunity to shine a light on these and start to create a little more accountability and visibility for emerging threats and so on.
Do we as a society, for example, when we look at the importance today of the digital economy in our societies and the size of it and how much of that money and tax is turning back into our governments and so on, are we putting enough money in ensuring the infrastructure that pretend or that sustain this digital economy? Are we paying enough taxes to ensure it's paid for properly? Or are we're
not
hoping not to touch it?
But it's not just, so the cyber's one, it's probably one of the top 5 or 7 market failures in that sense. But I think part of the problem comes down to which politician is going to get rewarded for investing more in cyber resilience. So I don't know how to fix that problem. I think public awareness is part of it, but it's not simple, and I don't know how to do it.
Could we be at the same stage as to many years ago? Highways were being developed as part of the infrastructure to help society advance. Is this the next wave, a cyberspace investment that we need to make? Margaret, I see you shaking.
But infrastructure is one of the big market right? There's a massive infrastructure debt. Yeah. But if we can find a way to do it better, make it more of so I've asked people, how do we make security by design a business and political imperative? And my IoT security friend said, well, the way it happens is there's a massive loss of life event, and then it becomes a business and political imperative. And I said, is there maybe another way we could do that? And he didn't have an answer. So I hope maybe we can find, again, not a perfect answer, but a better answer. But I think it's analogous to, like, how do we avoid cryptography debt and
Margaret,
or reduce it?
I know you want to say something.
Margaret wants to say.
I don't know. It's probably not useful. I mean, I have certain words that just set me off. Crypto agility sets me off. Give me an inventory sets me off.
I didn't use those.
Well,
I think I did.
And when we say, okay, well, we got to fix this, right? We got to fix what? Right? I agree that we have built a system that has flaws. I'm not sure that I agree that it is catastrophically flawed to the point of where we need to re-architect it. If I were to re-architect the freaking thing, right, I'd start in the beginning and I'd start with the APIs and change them all. Say, why on earth did I give a developer an AES call and tell him to find a key and an IV and put them in there, right? I should have never given him that kind of an option. So if I were doing anything with cryptography, I would just take all of the dangerous tools away from the toddlers, and I think I'd do a lot more for the state of the situation. Because when it comes right down to it, there's some things that are just very mature, and like if you're using a decent cryptographic library, and if you've got a solid, rock solid TLS implementation that thinks about all the stuff that's been thought about already, you're probably pretty cool, or as cool as you're going to get right now. It's all the little one-offs that you probably shouldn't have done in the first place, and you certainly shouldn't have given it to your SDE1 to do.
Jeff, can you match this?
Just +1 to cryptographic libraries that are hard to misuse.
Yes, and I know Bob is in the audience, and Bob and I, back in the 90s, worked on PKCS 11, and back then it was an API to use for smart cards, and the intent was the user or the operators of the software knew
exactly which algorithm to call, how IVs were, the length of IVs and labels of the keys. I completely agree with you. Today, that API is so dangerous because most of the end users have no clue. They go on, you know, a /dot and they grab some code and they stick it into their software and off you go. I've done my PQShield 11. Yeah, and I suspect, not to trigger you further, but when we add to our suite of capabilities, making it more agile, all we're going to do is we're going to compound the impact of how much choice are we now allowing people to make use of. And if anything, that's going to cause even more interesting challenges. Come to the mic, Rob. But sorry, no, you can ask your question in there. Bob has been doing P11 for what, 30 years now?
Yeah.
So
to be fair, the people who are supposed to be using P11 isn't supposed to be end users writing applications.
Yes.
It's libraries like NSS and OpenSSL, which are the ones who are supposed to provide the crypto agility. So you say, I want to do TLS from your application, and under the covers, they know how to make the negotiation so that we can create new algorithms. So yeah, PQShield is what it is, and it's not what you're supposed to be calling if you're an application, or you won't be crypto agile. But it can be part of the idea, because as we add new algorithms into PQShield, then the applications that use them can choose which ones to use on the fly. And in fact, we used that. We had a way of, you plugged in Forteza as a PQShield module into Netscape, and suddenly it would know how to use Forteza and be able to do all the Forteza stuff. But the generic Netscape that you got couldn't do all that stuff. So we used PK11 for crypto security. Real easy to do with symmetric algorithms. It was much harder to do with asymmetric, which is where we are today. So
yeah.
I forgot to mention another triggering word, Forteza.
Now we've got them all. There's a list.
Just got to give them in one sentence.
Go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there any chance I'm going to get a threshold PQC mode at some point? I mean, I don't really need it for signature, but I need a chem.
I'm a fan of threshold, but I also don't know the answer to your question.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm getting the feeling that it's at least, 5 years off. Yeah.
I think so. I think it has a whole lot of wonderful use cases, and I just think we have a bunch of other stuff we're focused on right now, and so it's just not going to hit the cut.
Yeah, I mean, like, I do threshold key infrastructure, and so, it's a very lonely space.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I know.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, when we were preparing for this this panel, there were a few things that you felt, probably not blockers, but that are critical, especially in your day-to-day life. Attestation was a big thing. It's becoming a fairly widely talked about capability. Did you feel like adding to this? Like, I think you had a few ideas there.
Well, just that, I think I covered most of what I wanted to put on my soapbox. Just that hybridization is a fact of life we have to live with. We are tied to the WebPK way of doing things. That also is a fact of life. And so we applaud all the work that's been happening in IETF to define the way to do these in an interoperable way. I mentioned that NIST also published not just MLDSA but also SLHDSA, which is attractive for certain reasons in that you don't have to hybridize it, and it's much more conservative in its algorithm primitives. Probably it's not quite as attractive for attestation as something like MLDSA. But for other use cases like Secure Boot, where there is no interoperability requirements, it is a very attractive option. And we are seeing hardware that does this. now I understand that this algorithm in particular is not currently accepted by every standards body like CNSA. And I understand that that comes down to interoperability concerns. So that's a little bit unfortunate that we have this, this really neat algorithm for this really core use case, secure boot, where it just happens, it doesn't happen to be approved. But that is, again, a fact of life.
Thanks. Michele, we have a few minutes left, or 14 minutes left, but I'm thinking, let's try and wrap up and have each of you provide your final thoughts on this idea and what's ahead, how many challenges we still have to solve, and the fun that we're all going to have collectively together.
I think we're still discovering a lot of the challenges as we go along. So now we have to build the VIPs, for example, to start doing, and then I think we are uncovering more things I never knew existed. So that's good that we're uncovering it now while we still have time to do something, not perfect or whatever, but something workable around these things. So I'm always learning more and more about aspects of our digital ecosystem that I never knew existed. But somebody smart is working on it, so thanks. And let us know if we can help and bring together all these different stakeholders who before, they didn't really have to work together because everything was working, and but now that we have to kind of fix and maybe re-architect some of the pieces, there is a little more interaction amongst people. So it's great to have events like this to do that. I guess part of, again, what is the end state? I think the PQC migration is absolutely critical, and it's one of the most important things that we've done. And again, a sign of leadership that really put us in a position where I think we're going to be okay. If that hadn't happened, then I think we'd be in a more precarious state in terms of the coming of quantum computers. Not that we're out of the woods, just to be clear, but let's keep going. And then, but while we're going there, keep in mind the end state, I think, is a state of stronger cryptographic resilience in some pragmatic way. And that will include alternative methods and other good practices for reducing sort of the blast radius in case one of these new algorithms is broken. So we all have an important part to play, and we need to kind of be respectful and support all the different parts that are coming together to build something, sufficiently resilient.
Thanks. Jeff? Any
closing thoughts? That there are some really important big use cases for cryptography, like the web, the internet. So much of our infrastructure depends on that. More and more of our infrastructure is now leaning on IoT, low-level hardware roots of trust, which bring their own constraints. And so it is nice that we do have this cryptographic menu to choose from so that we can pick the best algorithm for the best use case.
Thank you. Margaret, if you had to do crypto discovery on a Forteza card to turn it into a crypto agile.
To write an inventory.
Passwords.
Okay. Actually, I think I would say the way you should approach this, or maybe I'll just say the way we've approached it at AWS, is we said, all right, what's the most important stuff we've got to protect? Well, I'm going to start with customer to data center. Okay, cool, customer to data center, and I'm going to start with encryption because I'm more worried right now about store and harvest now, decrypt later. We're in good shape because all that's TLS. TLS is in good shape. We're rolling that out. So the practical way, instead of conducting an inventory or whatever it is that people tell you to do, or pretend you're going to be agile someday, like people have been telling me for 40 frickin' years now, which we're not, so let's just get over it. Start with a prioritized list, customer to data center. What's next? Oh, I think data center to data center. Oops, that's MathSec. Not too hard, we can fix MathSec. Now, I can probably start looking in the data center. A lot of the stuff in the data center is TLS, so I'm probably pretty cool. And then comes the hard slog at the end, finding all the little onesie-twosie weird stuff that isn't using an SDK that's well established, right? We try to say, if you're going to encrypt the data at rest, here's a encryption SDK, please use this. And that way, we just fix the encryption SDK, and it's all good. But after you've done the big blocks, like we're going to do the big blocks, we're going to find all the big popular tools, then you're going to be mostly done. But you will want to start digging out all that weird stuff that's hanging around. And every time you find one of those weird things that's hanging around doing something funny and strange, you should question your assumptions. Why did it have to be weird? Why did it have to be different? Why isn't it using one of these big blocks? Because this is an opportunity for you to not have to do it again. And I'm not going to use agility and I'm not going to use inventory. But you can, as you're wandering around saying, well, maybe I've got all the big blocks, now maybe I should go look for the little stuff. That's when you really question your assumptions on that little stuff and ask why you thought it was so darn special that it had to be done differently. That's it.
Any final questions from the audience? Any rebuttal on Forteza or?
I don't think anyone out there is going to defend Forteza.
Sorry, I'm just like, I'm teasing. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, I'm very much the man in the street in this company, but one question that's come to mind is we've been hearing excellent preparation for the onset of quantum computing, but I've not heard anything about the evolution of quantum computing. What are we going to face in 10 years after Q1 and so on?
I think it's going to be really fascinating. Like right now, I don't know that anybody's going to wrestle enough qubits into a bucket to do anything that, we haven't got anybody doing anything that they couldn't already do, right? As soon as, and this will happen before cryptography is in trouble, before cryptography is in trouble, hopefully they'll have enough qubits in a bucket to do some other interesting stuff. A whole bunch of interesting stuff with pathfinding, routing, drug discovery. There's some amazingly awesome things that will come out of a functional quantum computer that isn't cryptographically relevant, but it's got enough qubits to make your Intel sad. And I think that's the space that's going to be fun and fascinating to be in, to see all of the really cool discoveries that come out of that.
Thank you.
Any final questions? All right. I'd like to thank my distinguished colleagues from the panel. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it was fun. I think Margaret is going to be teased for the next few days. Thank you for attending. Thank you for the question, and have a good coffee break. Bye-bye.
So welcome back. I'm Nitya, and I will be your moderator for this session. And this session is Q21, and it's about post-quantum crypto selected topics. Okay. So our first speaker, I'm honored to say, is Lily Chen. She's a mathematician at NIST and a NIST fellow in the US. And her first topic is the first NIST PQC standards crypto model edition. Well, let's welcome Lily.
Thank you for the introduction. So this ICMC session and the first day PQ Quantum Day, Cyber Day, and the somehow placeholder the same title for my talk. The first NIST PQC standards. So then I think I should distinguish these two talks, certainly. Then for this talk, I give a subtitle, what are the next? And I don't think I need to talk that much about the first NIST PQC standard, because a lot of talks already touch base with NIST standard. They give a lot of detailed introduction. So that's I will spend more time for this talk for what are the next. Okay. So the first three standards is FIPS 203, is a MLKM algorithm for the key encapsulation algorithm used for the key establishment. And the FIPS 204 is a ML DSA, is a digital signature schemes. And FIPS 205 is stateless hash-based signature scheme. And so this is the first we published on August 13. So this is the time to celebrate and also the time to thank the whole community for the strong support in our 8-year journey. So we started in 2016 and call for like the criteria, what we want, and call for proposals. And then during this long journey, the whole community helped us to do the evaluation analysis to allow this narrow down twice and to publish, to select the algorithm in 2022 and also release the draft for public comments in 2023. So this is a long journey, and it's not the end. We have a lot of things ahead of us, right? So right now, what we have, I will talk about what we have ahead of us, but what I wanted to emphasize again is the strong support from the community, and also for now we have more than 2,800 individuals registered PQC forum. So every day the email traffic is so overwhelming. And if you only read the emails, that's your full-day job. And then I hope you can get a synopsis of each day and about what discussed, what are the issues. But the whole community is with us. Then you will say, oh, you selected 4 algorithms. What happened for the first algorithm is based on the Falcon. Yes, that is still under the development. We know that there are 2 ways to do the digital signatures. One is a Couillard-Shamir kind of paradigm. Then the FIPS 204 MLDSA is a Couillard-Shamir kind of signature, and the FIPS 206 is a kind of hash and sun algorithm. It uses a floating point for key generation, so needs determined to give more time to look into it to make sure that we will do it right. So that is still under the development. Currently, we have 4 candidates. We have 3 candidates in the first round. Remember, the psych was in the first round. It's Asaji-based. It was broken. So now we have 3 candidates in the first round. The first one is a classical McLeese. It's based the 1978 version of the McLeese algorithm. It's code-based, and it's kind of security already stand for a long time, but it has a very large public key and a small ciphertext and a relatively slow key generation. So we asked the people, can you find some applications? Do you have any applications? You need a very small ciphertext, and you can handle the large public key, right? That's the question we asked the community. And another candidate is called HQC. The HQC is also code-based candidate. It offered strong security assurance, the proof, and the mature decryption failure, and rate analysis. And it's kind of like if we compare it with another candidate bike, it has a larger public key and a several tighter side, right, compared with a bike. So bike has a better performance, smaller keys, but the bike has some update, and in the April of this year, they announced a new decoder in the 5th NIST conference, April. So that means we need to see that and to check that more. So that's between the HQC and the bike. So NIST plan to make a selection in the first round to standardize code-based. So we wanted to have lattice-based and also code-based. That's what we can get for now. Then about on-ramp signatures. So we received 50 candidates. And people will ask why needs to call for additional post-quantum signatures. We already have the ML DSA and the Sphinx Plus, and we also have the Falcon-based, right? Why you need more? So we consider the major signatures needs so far standardized lattice-based. So we wanted to have some diversity. We wanted to diversify the portfolio for the digital signature. That's our start point. We hope to have smaller signatures and a faster verification for most of the applications. And you can see that the candidates, currently 40, are still kind of in different categories. So this, we hope we can narrow down soon to give the community a smaller pool to evaluate and analysis. So that's, I talked about the first round and the unwrapped signatures. And then I will talk about other next steps. So now, if we introduce post-quantum cryptography to NIST crypto standard, you can see the chart on the right? So for the public key part, right now we have RSA, ECC signatures in the FIPS 186. And we also have key establishment like Diffie-Hellman and RSA key establishment in 856A and B. Then we also introduce 3 FIPS, and the first FIPS is under development. Right now, you can see that both classical public key cryptography and post-quantum cryptography standard are all approved, so a lot. And then in the middle, the symmetric key cryptography, then we need to provide some guidance. As you can see that, for example, like a FIPS 203, we have the basic primitives. That means how you do the key EM algorithm. And then when it is used in the key establishment schemes, we will need some kind of guidance about key valid checking and some other things to be used in the key establishment schemes. And this morning in that panel, someone mentioned about Sphinx Plus. That right now NIST FIPS 205 allows 2 to the 64 signatures. And obviously, in a lot of applications, we really don't need that many. So if we lower the maximum signatures allowed for each of the public key to, for example, to 2 to the 32, we can reduce the size and to make it faster. So NIST is planning to include that to special publication. So that is the 2 special publications are relevant to current published PQC standards. Then we have a lot of standards needed to be updated. For example, like the SP800-185 SHA-3 derived function that we need to kind of update with the PQC applications, like we need to either squeeze, extract, shake APIs to allow the general usage, and we need to modify SP889 recommendations for obtaining assurance of digital signature application. So this is a kind of something in urgent we need to update. So it's not like needs to publish some PQC standards and dump into the big picture and then that's it. We still need to coordinate with other existing standards to make sure they will work together very well. That's very important for crypto module community because of validations. When you do the PQC, you will think, oh, hash function usage and some other things. So that's and the secure strings, so on and so forth. So that's we have a lot to do. That's a part of our next step. Of course, the transition. This transition needs to have a SP800-131A. In the history, this document has a deprecate, some like a triple dash, deprecate SHA-1, and their list is in tentatively to deprecate 112 bits classical security after 2030. So that is a kind of heads up. And you won't probably think about not many people use that 112 bits. Yes, some people are still using that, and like the RSA 2048 and like some other things. However, this transition, instead of transit to the classical 128 bit of the security, you need to consider Consider the PQC transition. Then I want to say that this community also want to ask this question: when you are going to deprecate RSA, ECC, right? So, and use 131A as or some other document. So I have a question mark. You can, the 3-stage, the classical public key cryptography, and both classical and the PQC. And then at some point, we need to deprecate the classical public key cryptography. So when will be that, you will ask. So for that question, and we cannot give a certain year or certain date right now. What we are going to look at is based on the good understanding about the adoption of the PQC. We will prepare that date and to answer that question mark. And we will see the advancement of the quantum computers and the interoperability considerations and the 2035 timeline based on National Secure Memo 10. So that's what we will consider as that question mark. For now, we just want to identify something we can do and to prepare when we say, okay, we are going to deprecate something. It's not the kind of shock to the community. The community will be prepared. So about symmetric key cryptography, so you would think why you talk about the AES? Well, because one needs to publish the first 3/5 documents. We have a media storm. All the articles, news release kind of things, a lot of journalists, they got confused. They said that the quantum computers will break AES. Then NIST has some new algorithms to replace the AES. I guess they didn't think the AES is a symmetric cryptography standard. They just think that AES is whatever NIST already standardized. So right now, we still think AES, key size 128, 192, and 256 are still approved algorithms, and we have frequent asked questions, and when we should move to double the key size of these kind of things, we will foresee a transition need and to provide the guidance. So that's why I talk about symmetrical key-based. That's the reason, because I'm probably kind of shocked by what the journalists wrote in their articles. I think so many misunderstandings and scared. It's very scary. But, you know, the journalists just do whatever they want. They write whatever they can understand. You know, we kind of try to correct them, and a lot of communications, of course. So, and use the KEM in key established protocols. You know, the KEM is kind of different animals. Not only ML KEM, any KEM in the first round, right? So like ML KEM specified in, not a draft, in the FIPS 203 can be proved IND CCA secure. It's not a draft. I need to correct this. I made a mistake. So then KEM can be used as a primitive for key establishment. And it can use ephemeral keys for perfect forward secrecy when used in a certified static public key confirmation, can also be an implicit entity authentication. Remember, during the old days, we do the RSA key certified, and you kind of use that, the key confirmation, as authentication. So KEM primitive is asymmetric. It's different from Diffie-Hellman, because for Diffie-Hellman, you really don't care who gave the first, G to the X or G to the Y. And they probably can send the message simultaneously, but they still can get a shared secret value. But for the KEM, it's different. However, you can do that symmetrically if you do the two directions. You want the Alice and Bob play the different rule in a KEM. Maybe you can, right? You can get the two keys, KA and KB. So that's the KEM usage in the key establishment protocol. I need to correct this, not a draft FIPS 203 in the first line of this slide is the final FIPS 203. So, you know, we are working on the 227. That is a special publication recommendation for key encapsulation mechanisms. So in this special publication, we kind of say we will kind of tell some secure requirements and when used in key establishment protocols, and also how you can provide perfect forward secrecy, how you can use that for entity authentication, and anything about key confirmation. And so the question actually we have is that we want to make sure that whatever we specified in 227, people will use it. We don't want to, to specify a lot of variants, and people don't want to use it. So in the current SP 856A, you will see a lot of different ways to do the Diffie-Hellman key agreement, like static, ephemeral, static, ephemeral, and also two pairs of keys, and even MQV, and different versions of MQVs. Whether we want to do that many, probably not for 227. We want the people to tell us what is the major adoption. This morning and in the panel, people talk about how to use the KEM in this TLS. Well, yes, that's good. And then tell us which kind of ways you want, you think you want to use KEM. We certainly will support that. And without say you have to use this way, either too many different ways to do it, and then later on the maintenance and something become an issue for the future. So we determined to use a new way to do the 227. The 56A and the B was kind of like an evolution, kind of evolved from the X9 F1 standards, but we think this time we can do better. And please check, and if we do do something better. And we also think to have a workshop, online workshop, like a 1 day or half day workshop based on the 800 227 to hear what the people will tell us, what they want to discuss with the application community for the KEM. Then key derivation, and differently from the 56A, differently from Diffie-Hellman key agreement and the RSA secret value encapsulation. What you get after a KEM is already a key, right? You can use that directly, or you can derive a key through the use one of the key derivation function of SP 800-108. And you can also use the, if you think you want to use that pipeline of 56C, you want to do the same thing as the 56A and the 56B, go ahead to use the 56C, that's fine. So there are many different ways to do it. But I want to show you is a key derivation. In the TLS 1.3, it's multiple layers, right? So multiple layers, extraction, expansion, extraction, expansion. So you can see that that's multi-layers. When you think about KEM key derivation, you will think about the real protocol, how you're going to use this key. That's my point for this slide, I understand. So hybrid mode, that's my favorite topic, and people will give us 100 different opinions about the hybrid mode. So here I want to give you two terms. One is just a hybrid mode for key establishment. Another term recently appeared in the research literature is a hybrid KEM. So these are two things, actually. So currently in the 56A, we allowed anyone to get a T, value T to the key derivation. So you get the Z from the 56A Diffie-Hellman key agreement, and you get a Z from the RSA secret value encapsulation. Then you can load another secret value you can get from anything, basically PQC, QKD, whatever. Then you do the key derivation function. That is the current way to accommodate hybrid mode for the key establishment. And then the testing, maybe we will test, so the currently, and we test the different components separately. So, and if you do a hybrid mode, we still, I think the CAVP also tested each of the individual separately. However, recently there is something called hybrid KEM can be proved CCA2 secure. It's called SWIN. They ask a question, can the combiner to be NIST approved key derivation function? What I want to tell you is that you don't need NIST to approve combiner as a key derivation function. Because the combiner is not a key derivation function because it cannot generate a desired length. The combiner gave you the 256. So in the future, the separately probably validate 56A or B and the PQC keyM, allow certain kind of combiner. After that, that's a key. After the combiner, you got a key. You can use that as a key. You can input to any kind of key derivation function. So I hope I kind of like clarify something here, but maybe more confused. But always discuss with us. Summary, a lot of things to do. And the MVPs already have approved a validated certificate in the same day of the publication. However, we will continue and already ready to do the validation. So NIST will develop special publications, 227 and others for PQC applications. And we will release draft FIPS 206 that are Falcon-based. We will make the first round selection, and we will narrow down on-ramp signatures. And then we will update existing standards. If you see something needed, let us know. And NIST will work with the community for migration to PQC. So thank you for your attention, and also thank for all the support in the last 8 years.
We have a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, please step up.
In one of your charts, you mentioned parallel SHA-3. And the question is, I just quickly looked up the standard that parallel SHA-3 allows you to take very long streams and hash them. The question is that SHA-3 and its derived functions are big time components of PQC algorithms. And is there any work, any thought of how parallel SHA-3 or some parallel use of SHA-3 can be used to expedite PQC?
Yes, in a lot of submissions of the PQC, the designers say, okay, use SHA-3. So that's their kind of suggestion, and we think that's good. And then there are some kind of different way to use SHA-3. For example, right now SHA-3 is kind of like a shake, it's a black box. You do the extraction and the squeeze, right? So, but now we need probably to make that a revision to separate the extraction and the squeeze in 2 different API and allow to squeeze once, squeeze twice for more data. So that's the current plan, but maybe there are some other things we need to handle in the SP 800-185.
Any other questions? All right.
A quick follow-up.
Sure.
I was thinking more along the lines of that, for example, in the lattice-based cryptography where you have to generate large matrices, or even in the stateless hash-based signature, particularly in the latter, hash-based signature, you're using a lot of SHA-3. And can we somehow create multiple seeds in the beginning, and then from each seed run many versions of SHA-3 in parallel to fill the Merkle trees or generate the matrices in CHEM?
So I think you are kind of suggesting a different way to use SHA-3 in Sphinx Plus, right?
Yeah.
So in that, I think that is more detailed discussion. We probably should take that offline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Lily is available the whole day, I think. Right, Lily?
Yeah.
Okay. So please feel free to contact her.